This morning, last Sunday in February. This is a special day in the church here, and we're kind of glossing over the specialness of the day. In the church calendar, this is known as Transfiguration Sunday. And the Transfiguration text is one that you hear every year in church. It's the story of Jesus walking along with some of his disciples and going on top of the mountain to pray. It's Peter, I think it's James and John. They follow Jesus up to the mountain. After a while, and they notice that Jesus has become transfigured into three different people. Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. And they experience this awesome mountaintop experience so much that Peter says, Jesus, forget all about this other work that you have to do in the world. Let's just build a temple up here and stay here forever because up here is pretty darn good. And Jesus says to those disciples, no, you don't get it yet. Go back down to the mountain. We're going to continue our work. All right? That's Transfiguration Sunday in a nutshell. Thank you very much. Okay? Instead of using that Transfiguration text, I chose to kind of go with the text provided for this Sunday in the Epiphany season, if it's not Transfiguration Sunday, and it's a continuation of the Sermon on the Mount. And I chose this for a number of reasons. First, I was really struggling to come up with something new to say about the Transfiguration, so I thought I'd set that aside for a year. But I also thought that it would be great for us to hear from Jesus a little bit about love this morning. Because I don't know about you, but I know that I've been noticing that love isn't the first word that comes to mind when I think about what's happening in our country right now. I don't see a whole bunch of love going on. And I don't care about what political party you're affiliated with or what kind of social stances you take on things. Like, there's just a lack of love in this country. I watched a certain program earlier this week with a whole bunch of candidates just sitting and yelling at each other, and I thought they were going to pull out gladiator weapons and start going to town on each other. And as I was watching that, I was like, well, where is the love? Black Eyed Peas song, by the way. Where is the love? Right? And I kept on coming back to this text from the Sermon on the Mount, because in this text, Jesus is talking about what it looks like to love those whom we don't get along with. Now, Jesus ups the ante, and he talks about what it is to love your enemies. Now, I also thought it was important to talk about this text because February is African American History Month in this country. And every February, I spend time reading African American theologians. And there's a number of them you can pick up. My favorites include Martin Luther King Jr. and James Cone. And I love reading the theology of them, especially the sermons that they preach in their times of ministry or in their career, because they are just so filled with passion and have important truths for middle-aged white guys to pay attention to. So today I'm going to try to do something a little different. As I preach on this text from Matthew, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a sermon specifically about this text that's included in a set of sermons that was published into a book later on. The book is called Strength to Love, and it's a collection of these sermons all about these love texts. But in particular, this text sermon really rang true to me this week. He wrote this sermon, or this published sermon, while he was sitting in a prison cell. So he didn't preach it to a congregation. He sent it to a congregation, much like the Apostle Paul, to be read publicly. And the sermon is just called Loving My Enemies. And this morning, I'm just going to share with you some of the key concepts of Martin Luther King Jr. in this sermon, because I think they still ring true for us today. And that's why you see this little music stand in front of me, because you know I generally don't use any notes, but I don't want to mess up the King's words, right? So Martin Luther King Jr. sermon starts off with kind of going through the text as one normally goes through the text when they are going to preach it. He looks at where Jesus is located in his ministry and what is the given context for the reading that he's going to expound on. And like I said before, this is a continuation of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of Matthew. This Sermon on the Mount is probably, while it is the most famous sermon ever preached, it's also one of the longest ever preached. And it's really one of the first public ministry things that Jesus does. He opens up the Sermon on the Mount with the Beatitudes, which you heard a couple weeks ago, and then goes into how people treat each other and the way people treat each other reflects the relationship that they are feeling with God. And he kind of condemns actions throughout the Sermon on the Mount that people do against one another, that hurt one another. And then he comes to this section of what it looks like to love your enemies. And MLK in his sermon asks two important questions. The first one is, well, how do we love our enemies? And I know that when I read this text, I ask myself the same question. Really, Jesus? Like, love the people who hurt me? Really, Jesus? Love the people who cause death and destruction in the world? Really, Jesus? That means I have to love the person who's yelling at me at the corner because I'm going to hell because I haven't turned my life over to Jesus? Really, Jesus? This means that I have to love those people who pick on others on the playground? Really, Jesus? I have to love everyone. Like, how is that possible? How can I do that? How can I love people who cause so much pain and suffering? Martin Luther King Jr. says, well, the first thing that we have to do when we're called to this action of love is to learn how to forgive the other. He says we must develop the capacity to forgive. and makes the argument that we are not capable of love as human beings if we do not develop the capacity to forgive one another. Now, for Martin Luther King Jr. and for us, it doesn't mean that we need to forget, but it means that we need to forgive. Because when we end up disliking one another, it's not because you're a man and I'm a man, Mike, or you're a woman and I'm a man, Marilyn, or it's not because we're made out of the same substance, it's because we do things that hurt other people. And Martin Luther King Jr. essentially says we have to recognize that we're the same, but our actions are different. And that fundamentally I should love you because we're the same, but I can condemn your actions. And it's only when I can forgive those actions that I can see you as a human being or see you as the divine again, and therefore love you. Now, forgiveness is a huge concept, right? Because it's really hard to forgive at times. But no one ever said that following Jesus was going to be easy street. Right? We have to continue to practice and work on this capacity to forgive, so inside of us we can fill up and expand our capacity to love. MLK continues saying, we must recognize that the evil deed of the enemy never expresses all that he or she is. Here, he is calling out that while we might love ourselves, we must recognize that we do things in this world that cause other people not to love us or like us. Right? Because despite on how perfect I want to live my life, there are things that I do that make people really, really angry. And that hurt other people. And hurt other people unintentionally. I will give you a list of them, but I have a conference meeting to lead at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Right? I know just by my very nature, interacting in the world, and wearing what I wear, and owning what I own, and driving what I drive, and eating what I eat, that somehow, even when I don't try, somewhere in that system, someone is being exploited and hurt. And we must recognize that while it's easy to see the goodness in ourselves, we must also recognize the evil that resides in ourselves. Because it's really easy to label someone else as evil. But it's really difficult for us to recognize that evil dwells within us as well. And if evil dwells within us, it must also mean that the inverse is true. That those who we label as evil have good in them as well. Now, it might be hard for us to see or recognize, but guess what? Just like I said a few minutes ago, following the way of Jesus isn't always easy. It requires work. It requires us to see beyond action and recognize the person. When we recognize the person, we still live in that tradition where God created all of humankind and said, this is all very good. All right? So how do we love our enemies? We work on the capacity to forgive. We recognize that there's good and evil in everyone. And then the third one is we must not humiliate or defeat our enemies. But our goal should be to win friendship and understanding. Right? Here, MLK is saying we must be engaged in win-win relationships with those whom we disagree with. Because if we're only concerned about winning, we have lost the capacity to forgive and we have lost the capacity to love. Because we see the other as someone whom we can dominate, rather than someone whom we are in actual relationship with. And in our society, domination is closely associated with humiliation or defeating the other person. Instead, in this world where we're called to love our enemies, we should work for mutual understanding and friendship. Now, that doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, because we won't. But rather, it humanizes the components of the relationship. And that is how his love is spread. So again, to sum up, Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesus, and I think I would say that all the ways how we love our enemies, we work on the capacity to forgive our enemies, we recognize that there's good in our enemies, and then we see our enemies as something other than something we need to humiliate or defeat. Rather something that we should try to engage in life-giving relationships with. Now, the other question that Martin Luther King Jr. asked in his sermon is why should we bother with loving our enemies? And the first thing he says is returning hate for hate only multiplies hate. This is where you see the famous quote that people put on Facebook during African American History Month by Martin Luther King Jr. This is where the quote that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. This is the sermon where this comes from. And he says that if you hate someone just because they hate you, it does the world no good. He sees this world as kind of like a balloon that's expanding until it expands so much that it blows up, right? And think about all the negative thoughts or all that hate you're putting into the world is expanding that balloon even further and further. And that love is releasing some of the tension in that balloon. That's not his metaphor, that's my metaphor. So if it's poor, it's because I'm poor, not because he's poor, right? But he says instead of just hating, move past it. He says that hate scars the soul and distorts the personality. Now, he argues in a sermon that most people think that when you hate someone, the only person affected by that hate is the person that you're saying that you hate. And he says that's fundamentally wrong. That you can't be concerned about the hate you bring upon the other. You got to be concerned about what the hate is doing to you. That hate does us no good as individuals. It darkens our heart. It reduces our capacity for empathy and compassion. We must be mindful that when we are unable to forgive and when we carry the burden of hate with us, that we are the ones affected by it. And then he goes on to say, why should we engage in this act of hating our enemy? Because love is the only force capable of transforming the enemy into a friend and transforming the world into the kingdom of God. You can't hate someone so much that eventually that hate causes them to say, oh cool, I'm going to hang out with you now. Right? They can love someone so much that it transforms the relationship and real dialogue can happen. Now, if you don't think this teaching from Martin Luther King Jr. is still applicable for us today, I would love to talk to you after worship today so I can learn from you. Because I don't know if any words could be more true for me, for what I see going on. We are really, really, really quick to get down on it. Super, super quick to get down on it. And to boast in our righteousness while putting other people to shame. I think that's why Twitter was invented, right? So our calling, brothers and sisters in Christ, as we enter into the season of Lent, enter into the season of reflection, enter into the season where we're called to think about the relationship that we have with God and how that relationship informs the relationship that we have with the world, let us take these words to heart. Let us be about loving one another instead of proving that we're right. Let us be about loving one another instead of dominating one another. Let us be about loving one another instead of tearing each other apart. Let us be mindful of our capacity to forgive, to see the other person as a human being, to not humiliate or cause fear in another. Let us live the way of Jesus and live into the perfection of God. Now, MLK ends his sermon talking about that last verse that was read today, this super daunting verse that Jesus gives to the followers or to the listeners of the day. To live into this perfection of God. We had kind of a small mini discussion about this at a Bible study I was leading on Friday. Now, I don't think that in this passage Jesus is saying that the disciples or hearers of the sermon have to be perfect like Jesus is. Rather, I think Jesus is saying that when you live a life of love, you are living the perfect life. You're still going to sin, you're still going to hold grudges, you're going to do all this stuff, but as long as you operate out of love, you're doing all you can do in this world. And that's perfection. So brothers and sisters in Christ, as we journey, let us strive for that perfection. Let us strive to live in love in all that we say, and all that we do, and all that we are. Let us recognize that we have the capacity to love because God has the capacity to love all of us. Thanks be to God. Amen.